Star Wars is dead and the MCU is on life support. That's what many folks out there believe, but one person deeply embedded in Hollywood believes that it can be saved and that Deadpool 3 is just the movie to do it. And maybe it's just the only movie there is that could do it. Today, we're discussing whether or not Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman can bring the MCU back, or is it too late? Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Pro Channel. Happy to have each and every one of you. Mr. Kadish, it has been too long, sir. Welcome back to the Pro Channel.
I know, right? You need to come on our Saturday show and hang out every once in a while.
Absolutely. Get my daily or my weekly dose of sodium, and it is badly needed. So I will try to join you guys as soon as possible. And well, look at this. Never miss a story with People News. Well, People News, guess what? We won't miss one today. And this is by Tommy McCardle. This is Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman will save the whole Marvel Universe, says X-Men director. Matthew Vaughn says that the details he knows of the upcoming Deadpool sequel are unbelievable. And I have to say that, you know, we here on this channel have never said, I don't think I've had a single guest even, and that's really remarkable, Mr. Kadish, considering the number of people we've had on the channel. I don't think I've ever had anybody claim that Deadpool 3 would fail. And I don't think it's going to fail. I think this is the one good thing on the horizon for Disney. Let's read a little bit of the article, and then I want your take on it. Matthew Vaughn is confident that Deadpool 3 will help amend Marvel Studios' recent box office woes. Vaughn, who previously worked in the Marvel superhero space with his 2011 movie, X-Men First Class, superb by the way, recently revealed to Bro Bible during his press tour for Argyle that he is familiar with some of what happens in Ryan Reynolds' upcoming film. The few snippets that I know about Deadpool versus Wolverine or Wolverine versus Deadpool, I'm sure that argument between Ryan and Hugh is happening as we speak. By the way, maybe a title leak. The filmmaker said, that's going to be the jolt. The Marvel Universe is about to have a jolt of them, and it's going to bring that body back to life. I think Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman are about to save the whole Marvel Universe. So, Kadish, I go to you then. This seems to suggest that the MCU does need saving, that Hollywood does recognize that it's on life support, that things are not looking good, but that this film might save it. And so, one, tossing to you, do you think it's remarkable at all that now the Hollywood insiders, the stalwarts of Hollywood, recognize Marvel is down and out? And two, do you think this film actually could reinvigorate, revivify Marvel?
Well, the important thing to remember is that the stalwarts of Hollywood, I believe, as you put it, a lot of them, like, they have eyes and brains, so like they can see like when stuff isn't working and when stuff is bad. They just choose not to comment on it because, you know, they have to work with the people who make these things and hopefully, like, you know, get movies made. So hearing Matthew Vaughn basically just speak candidly about the fact that like Marvel is on life support and this is a movie that can reinvigorate it, I think is just, you know, it's just par for the course here, where it's one of those rare situations where an industry insider actually speaks the quiet part out loud.
And so you think that's just well known that Marvel's in deep, deep trouble right now. Everybody knows it.
Oh yeah, everyone in Hollywood knows that Disney's a mess at the moment, but they just choose not to call them out or critique them in any way, shape, or form because job security, right? Like Disney's still like a major player in Hollywood. When it comes to Deadpool 3, I think it's important that most people get some context as to what led to Deadpool 3. So it was originally in development over at Fox, and then Fox got bought out by Disney. And so like all the Fox projects that were going got migrated over. And it's actually kind of interesting because especially during the actors' strike, there was a lot of reports about Ryan Reynolds butting heads with the executives over at Disney, in particular Bob Iger. Now, I don't know how many of those reports are true, but I think that there is some credibility to the idea that Disney was trying to meddle with Deadpool 3 and Ryan Reynolds was pushing back against them because he had a vision for how he wanted to do it. And it wouldn't surprise me if him and Kevin Feige probably like butted heads, because I don't believe Kevin Feige has anything to do with Deadpool 3. Correct me if I'm wrong, Dubs. You might be.
I haven't heard that Feige has anything to do with it at all. And it also, I would say, the things that we have heard about Deadpool 3, and some things we're not ready yet to disclose on the channel because we're not really confident fully enough to bring them out. but it doesn't sound to me like the project has the fingerprints of Kevin Feige on it.
Yeah. And so like there's a lot of reports about like the storyline behind Deadpool 3, and there's been rumors about like Deadpool going through and basically like killing a bunch of like the stupid stuff in the Marvel universe and like giving it like a reboot point where they can go forward and basically like, you know, like reshape their plans going forward. I'm not sure if I believe all that stuff. I think Deadpool 3 is going to be kind of like a standalone thing that maybe brings the Fox universe into the broader MCU. But you know, we can hope for the best. I think that Deadpool 3 is going to be par for the course for the previous two Deadpool movies, so it's probably going to be funny. It's probably going to be entertaining. The fact that that Wolverine is coming back, you know, like that's going to be fun because last time we saw him was in Logan, where he dies. Basically, he's like old and decrepit and, you know, unhappy.
He still had a better death than Batman in this latest game. I'll tell you that.
He did. It's hard to have a worse death than
that's right. That's
Batman.
what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Well, Mr. Kadish, let's read just another snippet of the article, and then I've got a big question to ask you.
Right.
So audience, hang in there because we're going to see what Kadish thinks about a theory I have. Here's the remainder of the article that we're going to read. And folks, you can go check out this article in its entirety by clicking on the link down in the video description. While the plot of the upcoming third Deadpool film remains under wraps, the movie will co-star Hugh Jackman as he reprises his iconic X-Men role as Logan/Wolverine. Reynolds, 47, and Jackman, 55, first announced Jackman's involvement in the movie back in September 2022. And look how spry Hugh Jackman is. He's a fountain of youth, I tell you, and I hope he keeps rocking and rolling for as long as possible. Vaughn additionally told Bro Bible that he believes Deadpool 3 will create a starting point for Marvel Studios' future X-Men movies. Disney, which owns Marvel Studios, acquired the rights to the franchise when it purchased 21st Century Fox in 2019. I'm a genuine fan of the X-Men. All I want is for the movies to be as good as they should be, he said. And of course, there's another image with Doggy Deadpool also in the image. But so, Mr. Kadish, it sounds like this might be the jumping board for the X-Men franchise to come into being. We saw that, well, not many people saw it because it was an end credit on a film nobody went to go see, which was The Marvels. But they've had their introduction, but this might be really the major springboard. I would say, you know, from a strategic point, there's no better time to bring in the X-Men because this is the best shot at people actually going to see the film. But there are those who would argue that Deadpool is the wrong kind of movie to intro the X-Men because it's parody, it's satire, it's pastiche. What say you?
Well, what's interesting about Deadpool is his ability to break the fourth wall, right? Where, like, you know, in the previous movies, he talks directly to the audience. And that's something that, you know, came from the comic book, where Deadpool knows he's a comic book character and he continues to just like turn to the audience and address them directly. And so I think that that kind of gives him the freedom to, you know, do things that might not seem normal in other comic book movies. Like you don't expect to see Captain America suddenly turn to the camera and start talking directly to the audience unless he's in one of those PSAs that they do. But when it comes to Deadpool, like he's uniquely suited, especially like if you look at the end of Deadpool 3 or Deadpool 2, excuse me, where like he goes and he murders Ryan Reynolds, the actor, in order to keep him from doing the Green Lantern movie. You know, like there's a lot of stuff that you can open up for that just invites plot logic stuff that makes sense, even though it's absolutely crazy. So I do think that they can have a way where Deadpool somehow has worlds collides, merges universes. One of the other rumors I heard, in addition to the X-Men, is that this is going to be the movie that also introduces their new plans for the Fantastic Four. And so it's kind of like they're going to have like two different major Marvel franchises introduced in some way through Deadpool. But another thing that I've heard, and you might know about this because it has to do with Bob Iger, is that Bob Iger has been trying very much to kind of dictate how this movie is being edited, like the stuff that they're shooting. Because I'd heard a rumor that he doesn't want the Wolverine Deadpool fight in the movie, which supposedly is like a big fan service moment. And Ryan Reynolds,
if that's the case, Iger is a bigger idiot than I ever could have believed. I mean, that's literally the selling point of the film.
Yeah. So like there is a lot of unconfirmed rumors about studio interference with Deadpool 3. And so like my wondering is like, okay, if Ryan Reynolds gets the movie that he wants, will it be taken away from him and have like Fantastic Four shoehorned in there when it wasn't meant to be, and stuff like that? So I think if they just keep it focused on X-Men stuff, and they don't introduce X people into the MCU or whatever the case may be, it could be a good bridge between the Fox X-Men stuff and the current current MCU. So hopefully they figure out a way to do it.
You heard it here first, folks. If you see Victoria Alonso sneaking into the editing room, kick her out quick. Don't let her back on. And I have to say that when it comes to Deadpool and breaking the fourth wall, only one other Marvel MCU superhero has done that so far, and that was She-Hulk. To my memory, just She-Hulk, and so that sets the bar very low. Deadpool can leap past that just by rising an inch off the floor. Now, Matt, it's time for the big question, though. This is being alleged as the kind of film that could save Marvel. And frankly, if it doesn't, then I don't know where Marvel is going to go in terms of how low. And the reason I say that is because there's nothing on the horizon that I see that is exciting to people. Literally, I don't see a single film in development. Maybe Fantastic Four. Maybe there's something that's X-Men that we don't have a name for yet. But of the stuff that we have seen an image for, I see absolutely nothing that's going to bring back audiences. Deadpool 3 could do so. But here's the hard question Disney must face, along with everybody else who's worked on this thing. This is an R-rated film. And it may be a hard R-rated film, not sure yet. But it's an R-rated film, and it's releasing at the end of July. Now, releasing at the end of July is not beneficial to a movie, because what it does is it competes with the budgets for families, for dads, in terms of going back to school supplies and costs and all of that, right? And so families are spending money on sending kids back to school. And you might say, well, this is not a family film, so it doesn't matter. Well, it matters if you're the dad of the family and you want to go watch Deadpool 3, but you're also spending all this money on backpacks and yada, yada, yada. The other thing it does is, and I know that, seniors and juniors in high school, they want to go watch this. And we know that every dude in college is going to want to go see this. Now the movie is going right up against, hey, it's time to go back to college. Hey, classes have just started and all of that. And so studios typically want to release Memorial Day weekend, 4th of July, mid-June, mid-July, not the very end. And with an R-rated film, you're already limiting this movie's potential just because you've knocked out demographics that can't see it. Now, normally, and I know this is a long question, but normally, nobody would care because it's Deadpool, it's R, whatever. But in this particular case, this film literally needs to save the MCU, and it's all they have. And it needs to break big, big milestones for money, right? To reset the expectations, to let people know Marvel can still do this. Marvel is still $1 billion proposition. Now, here's my thought, and you tell me what you think, Matt. If I'm Disney, if I'm Bob Iger, here's where my fight's going to be. If I'm fighting over trying to edit this film and get the fight out, and I'm having a fight with Ryan Reynolds, fire me today, okay, if that's Bob Iger's plan. Here's where I would be fighting if I'm Bob Iger. I'm fighting to put out a PG-13 version of this right beside the R-rated so that audiences who go to the theaters can choose the R-rated or the more censored PG-13. I'm not doing that because I'm a good person if I'm Bob Iger. I'm not doing that because I believe in modesty or I'm a prude or I have a conservative vision for this film. I'm doing it because I need to make the most money I possibly can. And if that means a PG-13 gets me some 13-year-olds and some 12-year-olds and some 15 and 16-year-olds, and my R-rated film doesn't, then by golly, this is the film. This is all I've got. And the next 2 years are going to be even more difficult for Marvel. Matt, do you think that's something that you would endorse, not from an artistic standpoint, not from a fan standpoint, but from the standpoint of a company that's in free fall and needs to find its parachute and to get back with the wind under its wings? Is this something that you could see and go for if you were advising Disney financially?
Well, so there's lots of layers to that extremely long question. I think that's the longest question I've ever been asked in my life.
I counted. It was 18 paragraphs, Matt, but you're the kind of guest who can handle it.
Yes, indeed. So I'd say past this prologue, I'd say look at the history of the franchise, the Deadpool franchise, right? So first of all, the original Deadpool premiered on Valentine's Day, and the common knowledge there was like, oh, we're just going to dump this Ryan Reynolds vanity project on Valentine's Day. Nobody's going to watch it. Nobody cares. It's going to flop. Like Valentine's Day is not a time where you release a superhero, especially an R-rated superhero.
Only rom-coms for Valentine's was the traditional thinking.
Exactly. And it killed it. It made a ton of money, even though it was R, right? And then when the sequel came out, that was R2, and it killed it again. It made a ton of money because the people who liked the first movie wanted to see the second movie. And so you have a movie that has a track record of doing extremely well financially with an R rating because it has a very specific adult audience that goes along with it. So when it comes to this idea that let's cut it down to a PG-13 to try to get a broader audience for it, it seems like you're shooting yourself in the foot, right? Because it's an R-rated franchise, and this concept. So first of all, like releasing it at the end of July, I don't see that as an impediment to its ability to make money because technically, mid-August is when people start going back to school or like whatever the case is. So like you still got a few good weeks of summer movie season going on there. So I don't see that as necessarily a drawback. In fact, there might even be less competition during that time. And so like it could have longer legs than what would traditionally be. But this idea that it's going to save the MCU, this is something that I have a bit of an issue with. I don't know if you agree with me on this or not, but so like I read Matthew Vaughn's thing as, okay, so this is like the last movie in the Fox X-Men universe, right? And it's kind of like going to be the end of the Fox universe up until the point where everything is integrated into the broader MCU. And so like I feel like if they handle it right, this movie will make a lot of money and it'll make a lot of fans happy. But the problem is that in order for it to save the MCU, there actually has to be a plan in place to use it as a jumping off point to start making the type of MCU content that fans actually want. And this is the only quote unquote Marvel movie that I believe is coming out this year. They paused on everything else, not just because of the strikes, but because they're trying to pivot in terms of like their plans for like the movie content and stuff like that.
Thus an entire year of reshooting Captain America, Brave New World.
Yeah. And still nobody's going to watch that movie. Right. Like nobody cares about Captain Sam. They want Steve Rogers. Right. We get Agatha Harkness TV show and, like Echo and stuff like that. More stuff that people just never asked for and didn't want. So like if Deadpool 3 does perform well or overperform, right? Because it's giving fans what they want. And it's an epic crossover. And plus, Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman are like friends and they like to poke fun at each other on social media and stuff like that. So there's a lot of goodwill going into this one. But if there's not a plan in place and there are not competent people at the top of Marvel that are going to execute said plan, then this is not going to save the MCU. This is just going to be a bright spot in an otherwise terrible, couple years for the MCU because they're still doing the DEI superheroes, right? They're still doing the stories that nobody asked for, promoting the characters nobody wants, and they're just not listening to the fans. So the thing that Deadpool always got right was it listened to the fan base of the comic books, and Ryan Reynolds himself was a fan of the character. And when you combine that by giving the audience what they want and giving the fans of the source material a live action version that is faithful to the source material, you get magic. You get box office gold. And that's what the first half of the MCU up to Endgame is they were taking stuff from the comics. They were appealing to the core fan base. They were giving them the type of stories that they wanted. And since Endgame, Marvel has abandoned that strategy in favor of DEI superheroes,
Why
diversity,
is that,
equity,
Kadish?
and
Why
inclusion.
do you think they made that pivot? It's destroyed Kevin Feige's legacy. He went from being the head of the biggest franchise success the world had ever seen to now, in this past year, he's the producer, the executive producer over the biggest flop of all times, unless Indiana Jones: The Dial of Destiny beats it out. What a thing for it to be Feige versus Kennedy for the biggest flop ever. But why do you think they made that pivot? Why have they not made the course correction even up until now?
I believe it's one of those things where, like, when I lived and worked in Hollywood, it's very easy to fall into a bubble over there, right? Where you have echo chambers, especially if like you're super successful, you get surrounded by yes men who like don't challenge you or are afraid to tell you like your ideas are stupid and stuff like that. And you get to a certain point where you're so successful that you just believe that you can do no wrong and that you're dictating to the audience what they want to consume as opposed to the audience telling you what they want and you giving it to them. And I believe that they got to the point where, especially with the internal culture with Disney, where Film Threat's been releasing a lot of really great investigative articles lately about like
D-Files, folks. Go check them out. D-Files on Film Threat.
Yeah, Disney basically got infected by propagandists as opposed to people who actually cared about telling good stories. And you get to a point where you're so big that you think that you can't fail. And so they basically like, well, we believe in diversity and equity and inclusion and all this stuff, and so we're going to take this too big to fail franchise and as a way to basically convert more people to our way of thinking out in America's heartland, where all those rubes with their guns and Bibles live. And so because of that, they basically felt like they could get away with it. Like the brand was just like unstoppable and it was something that was never going to be damaged. But then they learned to their horror over the course of years where like, their next couple of phases flopped and all this other stuff, that their audience is by and large rejecting this stuff. And it culminated with the Marvels, right? And so like now they're in a situation where they're like, okay, we need to pivot. We need to restructure what we're doing because, Bidenomics, everyone's losing money left and right. They're having to fire people left and right. They're having to bring back old CEOs to try to fix things and all this other stuff. And basically like now that their pocketbooks are hurting, they're being forced to reevaluate, because before they didn't have to be profitable. As long as Disney was trucking along, they were like, oh, we can make stuff people don't want and put it out there and
we'll be
they'll
subsidized.
Accept it. Yep. Yeah, exactly. They'll accept it because it's the only thing that they have to choose from. But now that they're actually being forced to actually be profitable, now they're having to cater to the actual audience. And so they're trying to figure out how best to do that. And I feel like whatever they have coming down the pipeline, it's not going to perform. Like Deadpool is not going to save the MCU because they still have these bad decisions being made and they still have these terrible executives making those decisions, and they're still pulling from comic source material that was made by SJW idiots who like don't know how to write good comic books. And so when you have someone like Ryan Reynolds who can actually shepherd a project from beginning to end and stay true to the source material and actually engage with fans and get a bunch of fan goodwill and is a fan himself, that's when you get magic. And I can see Deadpool 3 doing really well, but I don't see that translating into future success, right? I think it's going to be a one-off. And once Kevin Feige and Disney get their hands on all the X-Men stuff and start using it themselves, they're going to drive it into the ground. Unless they get James Gunn or Ryan Reynolds to come in and kind of be like the new Kevin Feige or something like that. So that's my take.
Kadish, the imagery that I would have for this is, to me, Deadpool 3 feels like Marvel is underwater, it's drowning. But Deadpool 3 is where it's going to get the chance to take a gasp. It's going to get some air. And you're exactly right. It's not going to stay up. It's not going to rise up. It's going to go back underwater. But the amount of air that it can pull in with Deadpool 3, and by this we mean box office revenue and goodwill, might sustain it through this slog of terrible crap that we're about to have to not consume, and until the next day, whenever leadership is changed or the narrative is revisited to realign it with the marketplace. But let's go to now the prior Deadpools in the box office that they have had, and it's rather consistent. I would say that Deadpool 2 is actually not a huge win because it did not keep up with inflation. That said, it's not a huge loss either, especially when you're talking about an R-rated film. But Deadpool 2 made $786 million. The original Deadpool made $781 million. Of course, that's worldwide gross. And so I guess what I would ask of you as the last questions we wrap up, Kadish, is how much does Deadpool 3 have to make for us to call this a success? What's the number amount that we go, oh, this thing won. It did great, and this is the beacon for what a Marvel movie should make if it's good.
I'd say at least twice its budget. You want it to break even. If it does hit previous numbers, so like over 300 million domestically, around 700 to 800 million worldwide, as long as it makes its money back, I think it'll be considered a success. But you can almost see the headlines after like it releases and it makes a bunch of money. It's number one at the box office and all this stuff. Like everyone's going to say, "Oh, Marvel's back. Marvel is on the right track now. Marvel's back to like making tons of money." Where it basically Marvel had nothing to do with this movie, right? But they're going to frame it as like, okay, this is the first step in the pivot to making Marvel good again, and that's going to be all we see in the headlines. And so,
you know what's fun, Kadish? What's fun is we already know them so well that we can predict what they're going to do months in advance of them doing it. I totally agree with you. It's exactly what's going to happen, and because they're bad at their jobs, they're also going to claim that we never saw this coming, despite years of calling this. So remarkable indeed.
It really is, one of those the tail wagging the dog type things where it's like, just think about how everyone is getting laid off from the mainstream media right now, like newspapers or
in an election year. That's what's unbelievable. This ought to be, they ought to be swimming like Scrooge McDuck in the cash, right? At all of these news outlets. This is the election year of all election years, and yet they're firing people.
Well, all these journos basically voted for someone who put them out of work, essentially. Like, like I could have told you this in 2020, where it's like, okay, every time a Democrat gets in office and Democrats control the House and Senate, they always pass really terrible financial bills, and they spend a ton of money, and they just drive the economy into the ground. The one exception of that was Bill Clinton, but he had a Republican Congress, and he was also in a time period of the tech boom. So like he kind of like his moderate views on stuff kind of kept the economy from going down into the toilet. But it happened under Obama, and it was going to happen under Biden, because his economic policy was being created by Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, who are two of the biggest communists in the entire government right now. And so like when you have people like that running the economy, you have these big businesses who are really thriving previously and spending money stupidly and hiring people over the pandemic and stuff like that. And now that they're forced to actually look at the numbers and realize inflation's out of control, so their money is worth less than it used to be. Things are more expensive. This writers and actors deal that just happened just made everything even more expensive. They have all these bloated deals with creatives that that they're not getting any return on. And so like at a certain point, they have to realize like, okay, we're a business, we have to be profitable. And so like they start doing austerity measures, right? They start cutting back on extraneous expenses.
Well, minus the CEO salary, of course, that goes up while the 7,000 jobs are cut at Disney.
Yeah, but also a lot of CEO salaries are tied to the stock price of
so
whatever.
That's a great point too, Kadish, because you were talking about the economy doing poorly, yet the stock market reaching almost record highs. It's an indicator that right now Main Street and Wall Street have never been farther apart. Main Street is dying, Wall Street is growing. The folks who used to be anti-corporation are now empowering the corporations into some sort of corporate oligarchy. But the folks are still not buying the media.
Yeah, you also have to keep in mind that the reason that the stock market's doing so well is because we're in 3 different wars, and that requires a lot of government spending on certain industries. And so like it's artificially inflating things right now, in my opinion. I'm no expert on this stuff. But when it comes to the journalism aspect of this, it's like you can get a trained monkey, or in more modern terms, a trained AI, to basically write what we just talked about, where it's like, Deadpool 3 saves Marvel Universe. Marvel Universe is on the right track. It's like you just need like one dude to prompt an AI, like, tell me about how Deadpool 3 saved the Marvel Universe. And then like you have a billion articles that you don't need journalists to actually write. And that's what's the narrative is going to shift to at that point, because Disney is going to try to spin it as like, okay, we've course corrected the ship. Please come back to, you know, the Captain Sam movie and all that, and Agatha and all this other stuff that nobody wants. And what's crazy about this is that, you know, under Fox, like Fox wasn't the best either when it came to like doing like the X-Men movies, but they at least let talented people do what they wanted. And I feel like Kevin Feige doesn't allow talented people to do what they want. Like there's so many rumors I've heard, I'm sure you've heard them as well, about studio interference, specifically from Marvel. The biggest of which was how they, during Age of Ultron, when Joss Whedon was shooting that, they forced him to put in that weird Thor segment where like he gets warned about Ragnarok or something like that. And Joss was like, this doesn't fit. Like, I don't want to do this. And they're like, you have to do it. And they keep hiring these directors that they can control, as opposed to people that are talented and actually have a voice and stuff like that can make a good story, because to them, control is more important than talent. And you see this in Lucasfilm as well, because that's kind of like their thing, where she tried to hire people who were talented and she couldn't control them. And so like she had all types of like, you know, Kathleen Kennedy had all types of problems. And that's one of the reasons why she liked working with Rian Johnson, is because like he brought in a movie on time and on budget. Doesn't matter how good it was, she just didn't have to deal with them. But then you have Lord and Miller on Solo, who were just running out of control, and she had to basically fire them and then redo the whole movie, doubling the budget of an already expensive movie. And so if you notice, like up to this point, they're hiring inexperienced or TV directors to do like their feature films and you know, their series and stuff like that. People who have no business doing like handling $100 million budgets, but they're doing that because they can control them. And that's what this comes down to. And so like once Deadpool 3 comes out, if it's a success, and I believe it will be, Disney is going to be about controlling the narrative and trying to get people to once again accept their bad decisions. And it's going to be interesting 2025, I think, because when these movies come out and they don't perform as expected, like they're going to be back to where they started, essentially, at least in my opinion.
Control the creatives, control the narrative, control the audience. And unfortunately for Disney, it's constricted all of their ability to make great content. Mr. Kadish, I could not have said that any better whatsoever. That was fantastic. Where can folks find you and find that same said excellent content?
Well, check out the Salty Nerd podcast. We do 2 live streams a week, one on Tuesday and one on Saturday, where we talk about all types of fun and interesting stuff, mostly to do with movies and with a healthy dose of salt, which basically means we just crap on everything. There is nothing safe from us. But you know, you've been on our Saturday show a couple of times, and we always have a rotating panel there that is absolutely excellent and a lot of fun. And then on Tuesdays, it's me and my co-hosts of the podcast, and we're just sitting there drinking and making fun of stuff and having a grand old time. And so if you ever want to see what our next upcoming live stream is, just go to saltynerdlive.com. It'll take you right to our YouTube page, where you can see all of our past live streams and anything that's coming up. So, yeah.
Great stuff. And Matt, on a personal note, thank you for this conversation. I thoroughly enjoyed this one. And man, what a fun time to sit and talk, and very insightful commentary. Folks, make sure you go check out Salty Nerd and all the stuff they do. And on your way out the door, if you would not mind doing so, consider clicking the like button, share, subscribe, click it, stick it to the algorithms, it's the notification bell, and let this not be 2 talking heads on YouTube, but nay, join the fray and create a community dialogue instead. Drop a comment down below, let us know your thoughts. Folks, wherever you are and whatever you're doing, keep learning, keep growing, keep having fun, and rise above the control.
Floral, it's time for you to walk the plank.
What? Why?
Cuz you haven't subscribed to WDW Pro yet. Nor bookmark thatparkplace.com on your web browser to get great articles from great contributors.
What?